But me feeling guilty about the fact that I'm doing my thing and somebody else might not understand it and they might feel like they're taking it personally, I had to forgive that.
Nobody's perfect, right? So I'm not like, oh, Alan, you're the worst person in the entire world. That's not what I'm doing. But what I am doing is taking ownership. Like, yeah, no, I definitely made some mistakes and I want to be better.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, number 1103. Which relationships do you need to reset today? For episode number 1104, what do you need to forgive yourself for? So I have realized that one of the things that we have helped people with, and I think we're consistently helping people with, is one, we're giving them permission to lean into who they really are. Two, we're helping them forgive parts of themselves that they didn't really understand that they needed to. So I was on a show the other day, Alan, and it was pretty deep. We were having a really, really deep conversation. And the host said, okay, so in your story, you mentioned the fact that you didn't meet your dad until you were 27. Are you open to walking us through that? And I said, yeah, for sure. I'm more than happy to. And I walked the person through the scenario, how I met my dad at this diner, and I didn't even know what my dad looked like. So I didn't know if, I was going to recognize him. I didn't know if he was going to find me at the diner. It was this really weird situation that most people will never fully understand, I'm sure. But after I met my dad, I feel like something inside of me shifted, and I feel like I was able to understand myself and my dad at a different level, and I feel like I was able to forgive him. Now, something interesting happened after that, though, and I didn't realize it. For a while after that, my dad would text me or my dad would call me, and obviously my dad does not understand that I'm an entrepreneur who has a podcast and this big business, and again, no ego with this. I'm not the type of person that you can just call any time during the day and I'm going to pick up. Just because usually my phone is away from me and I'm doing this, right? So if you text me, I might not get back to you for a couple days. If you call me, I'm most likely not going to answer. And that's just the way it works, right? So it got to the point where I would start to feel bad. I would start to feel bad that my dad was texting me and I wasn't answering, or he'd say, hey, we should meet up this weekend. And I'm like, I can't meet up this weekend. I have work. I'm working every day. I can't just meet up on a whim. That's not how it works. But I also understand that you couldn't possibly know that. And I just kept feeling guilty. I kept feeling guilty that this person wants to be a part of my life, although they didn't for a long time, or maybe they didn't feel like they could be, or maybe they weren't ready, or whatever it may be. Now they do want to be a part of my life, and I keep turning them down, and I keep rejecting them, and I keep making excuses or whatever it may be. And I had this really, during that podcast, I had this breakthrough of, Kev, you got to forgive yourself for, you have to let go of the guilt. It's okay that you have a responsibility to make sure somebody feels respected. I like that, and I love that about myself, and I think that's important. But me feeling guilty about the fact that I'm doing my thing and somebody else might not understand it, and they might feel like they're taking it personally, I had to forgive that. And this was a real interesting moment for me because I was thinking about it, and I just did my best to release it. And my thought process was, look, my dad came into my life. It was wonderful that we got to meet. I feel like I closed that chapter. I have to forgive myself now that I am not going to uphold the other side of this relationship. I'm not going to be the person who now tries to rebuild a father-son relationship. I'm just not interested in it. And it's not from a place of anger or retaliation. That's not what I'm trying to do. For me, I just got what I needed out of it. The purpose was served for me. I feel good about it. And now I want to go about my life. But I definitely felt guilty for a while about that up until recently. And for me, it was this was my thought. What do I need to forgive myself for? And it was, I'm letting somebody down. I feel like every time I get a message from this person, I'm letting them down. I have to release that and forgive myself for that because, a couple years ago, 5 years ago, that wasn't even an option. There was no letting my father down. There was no connecting with my father. So it's a very interesting scenario for me, but I want you to think about that. Where do you need to forgive yourself? What do you need to forgive yourself for? So many times I've had conversations with the NLU family, and it'll be something from their childhood where something happened and they blame themselves. And they never forgave themselves for letting something happen because of lack of awareness, or making a mistake, or being in a bad relationship and not seeing it was toxic. If you're beating yourself up over something that you did, you're probably not fully closed. You probably don't have full closure, and you're probably reliving that thing pretty often, which isn't necessarily something you have to do.
Well, I think that when it comes to our past, there's things that we feel shame around or guilt around that we did, but there's also things we feel guilt around that we didn't do. So like, oh, I didn't take that job when I should have, or I didn't send that email when I should have. I had one person that I was coaching that had a friend who was in a dark place and sent a text message that concerned this person. And this person had a bunch of stuff written out to send to that friend. And he ended up deleting it. He's like, no big deal. Like, I'm not gonna go there. And that friend actually ended up committing suicide. And so this person who I'm referring to, obviously I'll keep it anonymous, I had him work through this. And essentially, he still talks about it to this day. He said, you were the only person to actually call me out, for lack of better phrasing, when it comes to like, you shouldn't have deleted that message. That was cowardly. And the ownership that he took for that then allowed him to forgive it, versus just pretending he didn't have any part in it. And obviously he's not the reason this person took their life. And that's why ownership, you need to be careful how much you take and when you take it and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it was eating this person up inside. And to this day, that person, even if they were listening right now, would say that conversation changed their life more than any other conversation, because he was stuck in shame without knowing it. So the story that I want to tell is one that I've told a few times. I don't like talking about it necessarily because it sucks. But I had a dog. His name was Boo. And we had a dog. It was a family dog for 12 years. And there was this evening where it was like probably 5 or 6, and I was in a bad place, and I was in my head, and I was like one of those elbows on the knees moments that I call them on this entrepreneurial journey. And I was very much like in my own head. And so a lot of times what I do when I'm in that place is I'll go exercise. Exercise usually pulls me out of that. So usually I would cover the doggy door. So we had a doggy door where I used to live. And usually I would cover it with this crate looking thing with plants in it. And I would like cover the doggy door so Boo couldn't come with me, because the street is obviously dangerous. And I knew that he wanted to run with me. So I forgot to cover the doggy door. I just went out the front door, closed it behind me, and I started running. So I went to the top of the driveway and I did around this loop. It was like a 2-mile loop. So anyways, I forgot to cover the doggy door. Boo actually grabbed my journal because he could probably tell I was in a dark place. And I didn't know this at the time. But so I do the run. I take this left, and this is like a pretty rural area. We're like kind of in the woods, but there's a golf course that I used to live near, like a mile up the road. And people used to often drink at the golf course and then drive. And there was these 3 cars that were all bumping music, and they were like bumper to bumper, and they were going really, really fast. And I remember thinking like that was weird, because I was running, and they like scared the hell out of me. They took a left. You'll know Laurel Street, I think. Yeah, so they took a left on Laurel, that really big hill. So anyways, I remember thinking like, that's weird. They were like really close to each other. All 3 cars like right next to each other. There's probably 3 kids or something, like just golfed and got drunk and just were being ridiculous. And again, I've done stupid things when I was young too, so I get it. So anyways, I get done with the run, and I'm at the top of the driveway, and it's like dark now. It's like pretty dark. And I see what I genuinely thought it was a plastic bag. I thought it was like a Walmart plastic bag, like blowing in the wind. It was actually my dog. And so I was like in absolute shock. I picked him up. One of his arms was completely like off, and he was dead. And so I'm screaming. The whole neighborhood could hear it for sure. I was definitely like screaming and like boo. And so I run down and I kind of collapse in the yard. Just like, what? Like, this dog means everything to my mom and to my sister, to my family, and 12 years, part of the family, obviously. And he was the best dog in the world. I mean, he's such a good dog. That's an understatement, honestly. Smartest dog in the whole world, too. But anyways, so I immediately call my girlfriend at the time. I call my sister. I call my mom, and I'm like hysterical, essentially, just like screaming. They're like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I'm like, "Come home, come." Like I couldn't even really talk, honestly. Anyways, I find out later that the journal, one of these little black journals behind me, actually, which I was journaling in before I left for the run, he put in his mouth and brought to me. He was trying to bring me the journal. He wanted to be there for me. So I should have covered. Now, here's the thing, right? Like, obviously, I know what happened now. Those 3 cars, Boo, like, wasn't able to get out of the way, obviously. And I don't know. I mean, is it possible they tried to hit him and did that stupid shit? Possible. Regardless of any of that, I knew that was a risk. Boo had almost been hit by cars before. As a matter of fact, he did get hit by a car early in his life. He got hit by a truck and like flung, and he was fine. He went to the vet. He like broke some teeth or whatever. So I knew that this was a possibility and that I need to cover the doggy door when I go for a run, because of course he's going to want to come with me. So I took ownership for that, and we buried him in the back with my other dog, Brutus, my childhood dog, and it was just a really, really sad night all around, obviously, and obviously it brought the family together, so that's the only good part about these kinds of things. But my mom and my sister were like very much like, it's not your fault, like it wasn't your fault, like it's okay, like he knew better. They keep saying that, like he knew better. I'm like, no, he didn't. He's a dog. I knew better. I knew that would happen. And now I understand, Kev, that like my anticipation of potential things is a very high thing I do. I'm always calculating probabilities. I knew the probability of that happening was high if I didn't cover the doggy door. That's why I took ownership. So I think there's a lesson in that too, by the way. So number one, I had to forgive myself. I remember crying during a speech at WPI about this. And yes, I have to forgive myself for that mistake. But first, I have to take ownership for the fact that I didn't do what I knew I should have done. And I think that hopefully all of our listeners can take something away from this, because you can't forgive yourself for something that you don't take ownership for. And so a lot of us know that something was partially our fault, or better yet, our responsibility, and we don't want to own it. We want to pretend it wasn't us, or that it was the universe, or that it was not on our watch, or there's nothing we could have done, or everything happens for a reason. I think that there's something valuable about taking ownership for the mistakes that you've made. And that was a mistake that I made, and it hurt to own that. But I tell you what, you better believe with Tucker, I'm never going to make that mistake again. Mm-hmm. And there are times when Emilia and I will be near the road here, and I'm very careful with Tux, like way more careful. So who knows? What if owning that mistake has saved Tucker's life? And that's the way that I think. I'm very, very careful now to never open the door when Tucker's not on the leash, and to make sure, because he might run into the street or whatever. So who knows? Maybe my children in the future will be safer because I took ownership for the fact that, and so I think that's really the through line is, yes, you have to forgive yourself, but you can't forgive yourself for something you don't take ownership for. And here's the interesting thing. There's a part of you that already knows it was on you. So whether you deny it or not, whether you want to avoid the pain or not, it's not helping you and it's not serving you. I remember I reached out to my ex-girlfriend with a message, and I said, listen, I'm really sorry that there were times when I was triggered and I was unkind, especially if I had been drinking, and I sent that long message, and I just wanted to say sorry, and it was a very heartfelt, thoughtful message, and nobody's perfect, right? So I'm not like, oh, Alan, you're the worst person in the entire world. That's not what I'm doing. But what I am doing is taking ownership. Like, yeah, no, I definitely made some mistakes, and I want to be better, and I can be better, and I'm gonna be better. And there's something empowering about that, even though it absolutely sucks in the moment.
Hey guys, my name is Jacob Valvalon, and I just finished Next Level Group Coaching. When I joined, I wasn't sure what I was walking into. But during the entire course and the program, I figured out it's not something that I wanted to do, it's something I needed to do. They helped set me on the right path with learning how to do PPTs, peak performance tracking, and every 2 weeks I was gaining new awarenesses and getting a lot more happier, first of all, in my health, wealth, and love, but also winning more practically and tactically in business. So if you're looking to upgrade your life and get to that next level, definitely sign up for that group coaching.
Yeah, but to your point, first of all, thank you for sharing that, because you've shared that with me behind the scenes years ago at this point, probably during the very beginning of our journey maybe. So I appreciate that. I can imagine how challenging that is. I don't know how challenging it is. I think that you have to, and to your point, if you're looking into your past and you want to forgive yourself, you have to figure out what part you took in it. And that's the only way to do it. The only way to do it is to say, like, what part did I take in this? The interesting thing, I think, and I hope this doesn't resonate with a lot of our listeners, but unfortunately, many of the listeners I've talked to, it does. Many of us get taken advantage of with our lack of awareness. And then it's very hard to forgive yourself because you say, I should have known better. Honestly, sometimes you don't. Unfortunately, sometimes you don't know better. And that's the difficult thing. Now, how do you own that? I don't know. That's going to be like the kind of the theme for this week, I think, is I don't necessarily have a resolution for what we're going to talk about today. Or I know I said that on the last episode. I don't necessarily have a resolution. I guess our goal in this week's episodes, and I guess this is the theme, is for you to look in the mirror and say, okay, what does this mean for me? Like, what is something in my life that I know I'm holding on to that I need to forgive myself for? Alan, I messaged somebody, I talked about this in the podcast a couple of years ago, I think, but there was somebody who I was kind of a dick to in high school. This was like a really good friend of mine, but I was kind of a dick. I don't know why. I just was like, I remember we'd go fishing and I tried to tip over the boat. I was just like kind of a dick. I don't know why. I think for me, I don't know. I really, genuinely, I'm not sure where it came from. But I remember thinking about it and I was like, I need to text this person because that's the only way I'm going to be able to forgive myself. I can either say, well, you were young and, everybody's immature when they're young. And that's true. But me texting this person at least allowed me to say, okay, now you did what you can do in the current to make up for the past. Now at least you can be honest with yourself and say, hey, can you forgive yourself for this? So I think to your point about messaging one of your past partners, it's the same.
Yeah, it's shame and guilt. We get stuck. You get stuck. And there's a way to at least get better from it. And, I said this recently. Someone close to me lost a family member recently. And I said, the only thing I can ever really say in moments like that, because I know what that's like, I was born in a situation where there was death in the family immediately. My father died when I was 2. So this for me has always been, it's my whole life. And so the only thing I can ever say is do something with it. Value your life more, build something better, become better. That's it. There's no, hopefully whatever that person was and what they did can impact you in a way that makes you want to be better. Mm. And that's it. Bad stuff happens. Such bad stuff happens all the time. And it hurts and it sucks. Avoiding it is the wrong answer. Trust me. I've seen people who avoid it. You face it and you say, I'm going to do what I can with what I have, and I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to use it as motivation to be better. And so every mistake I've ever made, every failure I've ever had, every unkind moment, every single wrongdoing that I've hurt someone, I try to look at it, face it, and say, I have to learn from this and do better now. Because you're right, as a teenager, as someone in their early 20s, as someone who grew up with challenges, you're going to screw up, but like, and this is what I say all the time, rather than just some motivational quip, hopefully it'll land, more powerfully in this episode. Everybody is doing their quote unquote best for the most part. The thing that people are not doing is bettering their best. My best at 16 wasn't that good. My best at 33 is way better. It's leagues better. It's 1,000 times better. I don't hurt people randomly with my own junk anymore. I try really hard not to anyways, and I'm not perfect, but I'm way better. That's all that matters. No one's perfect. I say this often. Perfect is dumb. Perfect is silly. Perfect is unattainable. Perfect is boring. Better is everything. And there's something to be said for owning mistakes, owning what has happened, even if it wasn't your fault, owning the truth of what has happened, and saying, I'm going to use this as the inspiration and the motivation, and I'm going to take that pain and transform it into something valuable. And I think that that's what I've tried to do in my life, and my life's been really painful, but I feel like I've transformed a lot of it, and that's all I can ever do with stuff like that, especially stuff we can't control.
2 questions for you if you're listening, and then we'll get out of here. 1, what is one thing I know that I should take ownership for? And again, you got to be very careful with these because you might own something that you shouldn't necessarily. That's really what it is. It's like ownership and forgiveness, I think, are opposite sides of the coin, and sometimes you can get the coin flipped on the wrong side, and you take ownership for something that maybe you shouldn't, and you forgive yourself for something that maybe you shouldn't. So this is a very hyper-conscious thought for you. But what's one thing you need to forgive yourself for? And what's one thing that you need to take ownership for? If you can sit with that, and will it be painful? Most likely. But I had a moment, somebody asked me this, and I think this is an important shift for you and I. For a while, we thought we were going to be the show where we had guests on that would talk about their area of expertise. So like maybe marketing, sales, coaching, writing, copywriting, whatever. We originally started where you and I just went deep. And it was like, hey, let's go deep and talk about really deep stuff. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, what is your show about? And I was like, well, it's holistic self-improvement, life, love, health, and wealth. And I said, you know what it is? And I said, this is like a new understanding that Alan and I are having. We're the show that helps you raise your awareness, and then we try to give you tactics based on a new understanding. That's what you and I have really well. I love giving tactics, but now I also value deeper understanding, hyper-consciousness. Of course, that's what we want to talk about. So while we might not be the place, and we will, but I think the through line of who we are and who we've always been and who we're leaning into is you're probably not going to learn like a sales script here. You're going to learn stuff about yourself that, this is what I said. I said there's a lot of shows that can teach you how to make more money. 5 ways, track this, send this message. I said there's very few shows who can talk about the fact that you have a money block and you have to change the identity of who you are as a person in order to make more money. That's what we do. That's what we do at Next Level U. So I'm really trying to lean into that because I think that's what makes us different is our ability to talk at deep levels, but also bring it to the surface.
So stay tuned for our next episode on 3 quick tips to get rich quick. 3 easy ways to become a multimillionaire with very little effort. 3
non-effort ways to become rich yesterday. That's the episode. That'll be dropping tomorrow. Next Level Nation, that is why it has been hard in the past for us to explain what group coaching is. Because, you're going to learn about health. You're going to learn about wealth. You're going to learn about love. You know the thing you're going to learn the most about? Yourself. And honestly, that is the most valuable thing in the world to learn about because you are a part of everything that you do. Our 8th round of group coaching starts October 4th, 2022. If you want to learn more about yourself, if you really want to get to the next level of your life, you must understand yourself first. I guarantee group coaching will help with that more than anything. I really believe that at a deep level. If you're asking yourself deep questions when you get to the end of these episodes, imagine what it's like behind the scenes with Alan and I and a private group of people. So if you're interested, please, please, please reach out.
I'm going to quote someone who was in group coaching for group 7. It's Melanie. Shout out to Melanie. She said, I am so pissed off right now that we didn't learn any of this in school. She's genuinely upset. She's mad that none of this was taught until she was in her, I think, 50s or late 40s. That is how much group coaching is valuable. Also, we have a free course on the website. So if you are not in a position financially right now to afford group coaching, hopefully we do. Hopefully you are, rather, because we've made it as affordable as possible. But if you're not, there is a free course on the website. It is the Next Level 5 to Thrive. If you go to nextleveluniverse.com, click the link in the show notes, it'll be right at the top. There's a button you can click. We had a bunch of people download it last week, so hopefully you can enjoy that. Clarity, confidence, commitment, consistency, and community. It's really how do we set you up for long-term success. There's 5 different modules. There's worksheets. It's different than a podcast. You're going to actually do some real training, some real behind-the-scenes work. Again, hearing us is great. Implementing is better. Go to the website, download the course, give it a shot.
Boom. Next Level Nation tomorrow for episode number 1105. What's the big lesson you haven't learned yet? Obviously, we talk about failing forward and jeffing forward all the time. Alan and I do not care when people make mistakes, but we do care when people make the same mistakes over and over and over again, because those are not necessarily mistakes anymore. Sometimes those are choices or chosen behavior. So we will talk about that tomorrow. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We'll talk to you all tomorrow.
Please reach out.